Chapter 181. I'm no stone monkey. No one can bind me. So, what is it? Xiaoji glanced in the direction Cassandra Vole was pointing. That spot was precisely where Aragog had been staying earlier. Now, Xiaoji could see that the massive cave was rather dimly lit. Yet, right beneath where Aragog had been resting, there appeared to be a smaller cave, hidden underground. Due to the angle, Xiaoji almost missed noticing this smaller cave. Holding his wand, Xiaoji cautiously approached the cave entrance. He sensed no dangerous aura emanating from it. He peered inside. The interior was pitch black, making it impossible to gauge its height or width. This smaller cave seemed just large enough for a human to enter, certainly not big enough for Aragog's massive size. However, smaller acromantulas could still fit through it. Thus, Xiaoji remained vigilant. He cast his bionic tear, which promptly read out 043. Without hesitation, Xiaoji leapt into the cave. Strangely, his body didn't fall straight down. Instead, it drifted downward slowly. That was because the bionic tear had automatically cast a damping spell on itself. Outside, Xiaoji conjured several dazzling Lumos orbs, bathing the entire large cave in bright daylight. Now, the smaller cave lay fully exposed to both Xiaoji and Cassandra's view. Xiaoji sensed intermittent, faint magical fluctuations emanating from within that cave. There must be something down there. Perhaps that was why Aragog preferred staying nearby. Eyes narrowing slightly, Xiaoji summoned the bionic tear's visual feed directly into his mind. The smaller cave descended vertically. Xiaoji floated downward for nearly 50 meters before finally touching solid ground. At the base of the cave, there ran a horizontal tunnel, just wide enough for an adult human to crawl through while bent over. The tunnel was completely dry and immaculate. Not a single spiderweb marred its surface. Clearly, no acromantulas dwelled down here. Xiaoji advanced another 200 meters down the tunnel, then suddenly realized with astonishment. The floor here was paved with wooden planks. Human traces meant this cave was undoubtedly man-made. Though that wasn't necessarily the case, history proved other humanoid creatures could also leave similar marks. The deeper Xiaoji ventured, the more ornate and well-maintained the tunnel became. Initially just plain dry earth, it gradually revealed fragmented wooden planks. Soon, stone slabs adorned the walls. Finally, magical lamps appeared along the ceiling. Unfortunately, all these lamps had long since lost their magical energy and were utterly useless now. After traversing nearly 500 more meters, Xiaoji finally reached the tunnel's end, where stood an exquisitely carved stone door. Xiaoji attempted to step forward and open it, but barely took one step before being pushed back 2 paces by an invisible force. The instant the bionic tear brushed against this force, Xiaoji instantly understood. Only living beings could pass through this door. Alchemical creations like the bionic tear simply couldn't enter. Turning back, Xiaoji smiled warmly at Cassandra. I've assessed the situation below. Are you ready for the next phase of our adventure? Yes, I'm ready. Cassandra nodded eagerly. She was relieved Xiaoji hadn't left her behind upstairs. Then let's go down together. Xiaoji wrapped an arm around Cassandra's waist and leapt downward. Guided by the damping spell, they descended at a leisurely pace. Curious, Cassandra gazed around, eventually spotting that horizontal tunnel. For adults, it required bending over. For these 2 minors, however, thankfully, they wouldn't need to bend at all, for now at least. Both Xiaoji and Cassandra sincerely hoped this remained temporary. Xiaoji led the way, Cassandra close behind. A Lumos orb hovered above his head, illuminating the dark tunnel brilliantly. This greatly eased Cassandra's lingering unease. Xiaoji strode forward bravely. He'd already sent the bionic tear ahead to scout, so no dangers awaited them. Even if unforeseen perils existed beyond the bionic tear's detection, his innate danger sense would surely alert him. He handed Cassandra a small vial of potion, an energy-restoring tonic, crafted out of concern she might tire easily. After drinking it, Cassandra's pale cheeks regained some color. She visibly relaxed. Before long, they reached the tunnel's end. a distance of nearly 1,000 meters. Xiaoji, the bionic tear, still stood motionless there. Xiaoji flicked his wrist, and the bionic tear instantly returned to his grasp. How does this combat puppet resemble you so perfectly? Cassandra couldn't help but ask. This is a bionic tear. Strictly speaking, it differs somewhat from the combat puppets I've given you, Xiaoji replied thoughtfully. Compared to those puppets, it's more akin to a true clone. Its combat prowess mirrors my own abilities almost exactly. It's just that its materials are exceedingly rare. So far, I've only managed to craft a single one. Naturally, Xiaoji wouldn't reveal this was a reward granted by the system, but since he'd obtained its blueprints, he fully intended to produce more bionic tears later. You truly are extraordinary, just like that monkey who sprang from a rock, Cassandra remarked, now gradually growing accustomed to his feats. Most 11- or 12-year-old wizards could barely even master the levitation charm, yet Xiaoji already crafted such formidable alchemical constructs. Wasn't this downright superhuman? Even the legendary Merlin himself likely couldn't compare. I'm no monkey. No one can ever bind me, Xiaoji murmured softly, so quietly that Cassandra failed to catch his words. She studied the stone door, intricately carved with unknown magical runes and ornate, enigmatic reliefs. Xiaoji cautiously stepped forward. He felt a faint ripple of magic graze his body. Then, effortlessly, he reached the door, and Cassandra followed suit without any hindrance. So, this door permits only living beings entry. Or rather, only humans, Xiaoji mused. Now he understood why Aragog couldn't open it. It must have sent its offspring to explore, but they'd been repelled by the door itself, unable to even approach it. Testing further, Xiaoji extended his hand, yet his danger sense remained silent. He placed his palm against the door and gently pushed. Click! The stone door slowly swung open. It had never been locked at all. Xiaoji swiftly pulled Cassandra behind him, positioning himself squarely in front of her. No matter what, he'd never lower his guard. Click, click. The door now stood fully open, revealing what lay beyond. Chapter 182. The Gryffindor Treasure. The Birth of a Melee Wizard. To Xiaoji's surprise, the space behind the stone door was actually quite small, smaller even than his own bedroom. It was a circular stone chamber, completely empty except for a stone table in the center, upon which rested a dark red gemstone. The gem was roughly the size of a human head, yet it appeared dull and lifeless. Xiaoji cautiously approached the gem, initially mistaking it for a magical stone of human size. However, he sensed no familiar magical energy emanating from it. There seemed to be absolutely no trace of magical fluctuations. It resembled nothing more than an ordinary gemstone from the Muggle world. Still, Xiaoji refused to believe such a hidden treasure would be completely ordinary. His innate crisis detection remained dormant, so he slowly placed his hand on the dark red gem. Suddenly, the gem began emitting a soft glow. I knew it. You're anything but ordinary, Xiaoji murmured, maintaining his position after confirming there was no danger. Cassandra Vole, however, wasn't nearly as composed. Facing an unknown object so carelessly was utterly irrational. Xiaoji nodded at her, signaling there was nothing to worry about. Vum! A brilliant red light burst forth from the gem, instantly illuminating the entire chamber and bathing both Xiaoji and Cassandra Vole in its glow. Xiaoji didn't flinch. He sensed this light would benefit him, and his instincts had never failed him. Sure enough, he felt a tingling sensation throughout his body. He raised his hand and realized his power levels had seemingly increased. He opened his system interface. Name: Xiaoji. Race: Human. Class: Archmage. Strength: 15. Intelligence: 10. Magic power: 11. Remaining skill points: 0. To his astonishment, his strength stat, previously at 10, had now risen to 15. That red light had directly enhanced his physical abilities by a full 5 points. He quickly turned to Cassandra Vole, who'd also been bathed in the light. She stood there shyly, face flushed crimson. I feel all tingly. Should we head back now? After exposure to the light, Cassandra Vole experienced an intense tingling sensation, followed by uncontrollable itching. She struggled to resist the urge to scratch. It would be so undignified, especially in front of Xiaji. Crack. A crisp sound of stone shattering echoed from behind them. Xiaji turned to see the dark red gem had shattered completely. He hurried over and picked up a fragment, but before he could apply any force, it crumbled into dark red powder. Evidently, this was some kind of alchemical creation or rare mineral that released mystical rays capable of strengthening human bodies upon contact. Xiaji examined himself and found no adverse effects, unlike Cassandra Vole, who continued to suffer from itching. Xiaji, can we go back now? I really need a bath. Cassandra Vole's voice trembled softly from behind. He turned to see her vigorously rubbing her hands together, scraping off thick layers of grime.
Eep.
She was nearly frantic. When had her body become so filthy? It was unbearable. Relax, Cassandra Vole. It's not that you're dirty. The gem's rays purged impurities from your body, which explains all this grime. Don't look. She refused to let him see her filthy state. It would be far too indecent. All right. Xiaji turned away, only to notice a glimmering object within the gem's remains. Upon closer inspection under his Lumos spell, he realized it was a silver object. He reached out and froze. It was a sword hilt. Gripping it tightly, he pulled with all his might. Swish! A gleaming silver sword emerged completely. Xiaji stared at the unmistakably familiar blade, momentarily speechless.
Ding!
Congratulations, host. You've successfully recovered one of the Gryffindor treasures. Rewarding 3 skill points. One of Gryffindor's treasures? Xiaji had no choice but to accept this truth. He'd just retrieved the sword of Gryffindor. But wasn't this sword supposed to be hidden inside the sorting hat?
Ding!
The sorting hat functions as a portal. Any true Gryffindor can retrieve their sword from within, regardless of its original location. Right, I recall this lore. During the final battle, Neville Longbottom drew the sword of Gryffindor from the hat, decapitating Nagini, Voldemort's Horcrux, with it. Even though the sword had left Hogwarts by then, Neville still managed to pull it from the hat. This was clearly another of Gryffindor's treasures, meaning there must be more hidden somewhere. Xiaji, curiosity, flared instantly. Cassandra Vole, meanwhile, stood stunned, momentarily forgetting her own itching at the sight of a sword materializing from thin air. Where did that sword come from? She asked breathlessly. This is the sword of Gryffindor, Xiaji replied, pointing to its engravings. This chamber must be one of its storage sites. He swung the blade playfully. Now I've got a melee weapon. Imagine, one hand on the sword, the other casting Lumos. There was no way he'd ever hand this over to anyone. Its origins were far too complicated. His nightly escapades had already violated 100 school rules. Professor McGonagall would have a stroke. Cassandra Vole also noticed her own physical changes. Her strength had visibly increased. Though Xiaji couldn't quantify her exact gains, he sensed a marked surge in her magical reserves. After all, physical vigor directly influences magical capacity. Stronger witches naturally store more magic. After thoroughly searching the chamber and finding nothing else, Xiaji took Cassandra Vole's hand, spun around, and vanished from sight. The Forbidden Forest held no anti-disapparition wards, allowing him to teleport them away freely. They reappeared at the tunnel entrance. Eagerly, Cassandra Vole scrambled inside. She couldn't wait to bathe. Every step sent fresh clumps of grime tumbling off her body, driving this normally composed witch nearly mad. Why aren't you covered in filth? She demanded indignantly. Probably because my body had little dirt to begin with, he replied honestly. His body had already been enhanced once by the system. Any impurities had vanished during his transformation into an archmage. Thus, despite his 5-point strength boost, no grime appeared, or at least nothing as obvious as hers. Are you implying you're cleaner than me? She lunged at him.
Ow.
Stop pinching. You've got way too much strength now. Crap. Filch might be coming. Chapter 183, 1001 Nights of Monkey Tales. Cassandra and Xiaji eventually made it back to the Gryffindor common room without any issues. Cassandra hurriedly bid Xiaji farewell before taking a bath. Xiaji also enjoyed a nice bath and then returned to his own dormitory. Tonight had been quite eventful. He'd only intended to obtain venom and fangs from the giant eight-eyed spiders, but instead unexpectedly discovered one of Gryffindor's hidden treasures. It seems that all four founders of the four houses didn't just leave behind a secret chamber. Slytherin did, but so did the others. Slytherin left behind its chamber. Gryffindor left behind its treasure. But what about Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff? What other secrets might they have left behind? Lying in bed, Xiaji found himself lost in thought. He wondered whether he'd be able to uncover all these secrets during his 7 years at Hogwarts. Suddenly, he heard a noise at the door. Someone seemed to be opening it. Xiaji raised his head and saw Cassandra, blushing, clutching a pillow as she quietly slipped into his room. "You promised me you'd finish telling the story," Cassandra said, climbing into the bed beside Xiaji. That bed had remained neatly made ever since. "All right, let's continue the story about the monkeys." From then on, almost every night, Cassandra would come over to listen to stories. Thankfully, Cassandra always gave off an aloof, unapproachable vibe, so she didn't have many friends. As a result, no one ever noticed that she wasn't sleeping in her own bed each night. Days passed, and Wood grew increasingly anxious, as the first Quidditch match was fast approaching. It was Gryffindor versus Slytherin. Every time he thought of Slytherin's 7 brand-new Nimbus 2001 brooms, he felt an inexplicable sense of dread. Gryffindor's brooms, on the other hand, were far too outdated. Only Xiaji and Cassandra rode the newest models. Harry's Nimbus 2000 was still quite fast, but the rest of the team, well, Wood wasn't even sure if Fred and George could keep up with the quaffle. Xiaji and Cassandra, however, had absolutely no worries. Both their brooms were state-of-the-art, and their physical abilities had been greatly enhanced. There was no need to explain how Xiaji knew this. He still felt a bit of a sore neck to this day. For Slytherin players to catch up to them, they have to rely purely on their flying skills, and knocking them off their brooms? That was utterly impossible. No one could predict who'd actually be knocked off during the match. Harry, too, was feeling quite anxious. Though the incident with the basilisk no longer distracted him, as Seeker, the outcome of the match largely depended on whether he managed to catch the golden snitch. His pressure was immense. Before long, the weekend arrived, the day Gryffindor faced off against Slytherin. It was also the first Quidditch match Xiaji and Cassandra would ever play in. In the changing room, Xiaji saw Harry looking utterly dejected. Harry forced a weak smile toward Xiaji. That was his way of greeting him. The pressure on him was overwhelming. Just moments earlier, during breakfast, Wood had told him, "Catch the golden snitch before Malfoy does, or die trying on the field." Xiaji seemed to read Harry's thoughts and patted his shoulder. "Relax. Today, Big Brother's got you covered. You can just lie back and enjoy the ride." Lying back and enjoying the ride? "I'd rather not end up lying on the field," Harry replied gloomily. Lying down on the field surely meant he'd been gravely injured and couldn't get back up, right? Xiaji merely shook his head helplessly. "Cultural differences. Better not to discuss them too much. The more you talk, the more mistakes you make." Sure enough, Harry grew even more despondent. "Just focus on catching the golden snitch. Leave the rest to us." Xiaji simply tried to encourage him. This time, Gryffindor fielded 2 new chasers, Xiaji and Cassandra. Angelina Johnson filled the 3rd chaser spot. The usual chasers, Alicia Spinnet and Katie Bell, served as reserves. Neither of them minded. They'd long witnessed Xiaji and Cassandra's abilities. Especially during training, their flawless teamwork and extraordinary skill had left everyone in awe. Of course, at Wood's insistence, all of this remained a closely guarded secret, just as it had been when Harry first joined the team. Thus, though other teams knew Xiaji and Cassandra seemed exceptionally talented during tryouts, they still had no idea just how strong they truly were. Wood intended to unveil these 2 new assets first against Slytherin, to test them right away. As they stepped onto the field, they were greeted by thunderous cheers. Apart from Slytherin, Students from all three other houses cheered wildly for Gryffindor. No one wanted Slytherin to win. Everyone hoped they'd be defeated. Slytherin truly had no popularity whatsoever. When Wood and Flint shook hands, they exchanged hostile glares. If looks could kill, sparks would have flown before the match even began. Their handshake was equally forceful, as though each wanted to crush the other's hand. At the sound of my whistle, Madam Hooch announced. At that signal, all players soared into the air. Lee and Jordan's commentary began at once. And now, the match officially begins. Gryffindor has fielded 2 new players this time, the second-year Xiaji and his girlfriend, Cassandra Vole. Jordan, Professor McGonagall's furious voice rang out. Oh, right, sorry, Professor. I simply couldn't contain myself. Ahem. Now, the match has officially begun. I must say, Slytherin also has a new player. Rumor has it he secured his spot on the team by having his father donate 7 Nimbus 2001 brooms to Slytherin. Truly, a player bought into the team with money. Jordan, I'm warning you, McGonagall snapped. Okay, sorry, I promise this is the last time. The match is now underway. The golden snitch remains unseen. Oh, what's happening? Slytherin's captain, Marcus Flint, had the quaffle, but somehow it ended up in Xiaji's hands. The quaffle's now with Cassandra Vole. Oh, what a brilliant feint. Adrian Pusey stood frozen, utterly bewildered. Cassandra Vole completely evaded his defense. Oh, the quaffle's back with Xiaji. What a flawless 1-2 pass. Oh. Slytherin's goalposts are right there. Xiaji's aiming to score. He's shooting. Chapter 184. Let go of me. I have sweated for Gryffindor. I have bled for Gryffindor. Way too much. Oh, it's a shame. Xiaji's throws were a bit off course. Perhaps he was nervous being on the field for the first time. Wait. What just happened? Xiaji's balls actually curved midair. Merlin's beard. The ball went in. Gryffindor has scored. The current score is 10 o'clock. Slytherin's keeper, Bletchley, still looks completely baffled. I bet he was certain Xiaji's shot had missed completely. Marcus Flint has called for a timeout. He's protesting, claiming Xiaji used magic during his throw. Oh, excellent. Madam Hooch has dismissed Flint's complaint. No magic was used in Xiaji's throw. The score stands. From that point onward, the match turned into a spectacular performance by Xiaji and Cassandra alone. Xiaji's balls always curved unpredictably, leaving Slytherin's keeper utterly flustered. Cassandra, on the other hand, played quite differently, relying on flawless feints. She effortlessly dodged past the opposing keeper multiple times, leaving Bletchley's face completely pale from frustration. She even managed to toss a few curved balls identical to Xiaji's style. Yes, her strength now allowed her to deliver such miraculous throws. Though their curves weren't quite as extreme as Xiaji's, they still completely overwhelmed Slytherin's defense. Oh, Merlin's beard. It's only been 15 minutes, yet the score's already 150-0. They're scoring at a rate of 1 goal per minute. Slytherin's entire team is utterly stunned. This is a complete blowout. Harry hovered high above, grinning ear to ear. Even if Draco managed to catch the snitch now, Gryffindor wouldn't lose. This realization lifted a massive weight off his shoulders. Even so, Harry had no intention of letting Draco catch the snitch first. With that thought, he began searching even more diligently. Oh, what despicable foul play. Trailing so badly, Slytherin resorted to vile, disgusting. Jordan. Professor McGonagall angrily cut Lee Jordan off. No. Professor. This time, you can't stop me. Slytherin used those vile, disgusting tactics to knock poor Angelina off her broom. Oh, poor girl. Slytherin truly. Let me go. What are you doing? I still need to commentate. You can't treat me like this. I've sweated for Gryffindor. Way too much. Lee Jordan, filled with indignation, was dragged off the commentary platform by students summoned by Professor McGonagall. Professor McGonagall herself took over commentary duties. Her tone was far more professional than Lee Jordan's, yet she remained thoroughly thrilled by Xiaoji and Cassandra's performances. Gryffindor now leads at 250:0. Slytherin's players stood no chance against Xiaoji and Cassandra. Their flying skills simply couldn't compare. Even attempts to knock them off their brooms failed. They simply couldn't catch up. At one point, two Slytherin players tried to bring Cassandra down, but she fooled them with a feint, causing them to crash into each other instead. Finally, Harry spotted the snitch. Though Draco's broom was superior, Harry easily outpaced him. Ultimately, the final score stood at 400-0. The match officially ended. Professor McGonagall beamed so widely her eyes vanished entirely. Such a lopsided victory, Gryffindor utterly humiliating Slytherin, was an unprecedented sight. She felt an immense sense of satisfaction. Back when she played for the team, her final match before graduation ended in defeat due to Slytherin's blatant fouls, which had nearly cost her life. Thus, every time Gryffindor faced Slytherin, she made sure to attend, just to witness Slytherin's failures. Yet, before Harry joined the team, Gryffindor rarely stood a chance against them. Hence, this overwhelming victory brought her immense joy. She even regretted not recruiting Xiaoji during his first year when he took flying class. After all, joining the team posed no conflict with detention. The stadium erupted in jubilation, while Slytherin players fell into stunned silence and gloom. Still, most spectators admired Xiaoji and Cassandra's skill, even if they dared not show it openly. In the stands, Hermione, Luna, Cedric, and Hagrid celebrated Gryffindor's triumph together. Oh, what now? If Hufflepuff ends up facing Gryffindor, Cedric paused mid-celebration, suddenly recalling he wasn't actually on Gryffindor's side. Luna, however, cared little. She only cared that her friends had won. Back on the field, Xiaoji and Cassandra were escorted back to Gryffindor's common room, where an enormous celebration ensued. Fred and George somehow procured a massive barrel of butterbeer. Harry rushed over, grinning. Now I get what you meant by winning effortlessly, Xiaoji. Next match, I'll just nap on my broom, haha. Absolutely not. What if opposing seeker spots the snitch right away? Don't get cocky, Harry. Xiaoji sternly admonished him. Enough talk, try our latest invention. Fred and George squeezed over, holding a suspicious-looking packet of cookies. Xiaoji eyed them warily. They tried shoving a cookie into his mouth, but he reacted faster, snatching it and stuffing it into Ron's gaping mouth, who stood there grinning foolishly. Smack! Ron froze, then transformed into a chubby canary. Aha! Everyone burst into laughter. Canary crackers, you still think you can prank me? You've got a long way to go. Xiaoji gave a cool thumbs up and sniffed proudly. Now reverted to normal, Ron charged at Fred and George, who promptly grabbed him by the shoulders and carried him off. We just want little Ronnie to test more of our products, they declared. Ron shrieked as he was dragged away. How does it feel? Cassandra sat beside Xiaoji, holding a glass of juice. Fantastic. Xiaoji beamed. Back then, you weren't even happy when I convinced you to join the team. Thank you, Cassandra. Flying alongside you makes me so happy. Chapter 185, Lockhart. Pick a soft target. Xiaoji, you're up. November had not yet come to an end when Xiaoji noticed a notice board announcement regarding the dueling club. He remembered that the club was supposed to be launched only after Christmas, yet it was now being held earlier than expected. Many students hoped that Professor Flitwick would be the one to teach them dueling, given the widespread rumor that he had been a dueling champion in his youth. Although Lockhart still had quite a few mindless admirers, many others saw through his empty bravado. None of them wanted to see Lockhart standing on the stage to instruct them in dueling. The dueling club's date was set for the following week, and everyone showed great interest in it. As usual, Hermione borrowed a book on dueling and spent every day studying it. She also frequently asked Xiaoji for tips on combat experience. Xiaoji enthusiastically recommended Professor Flitwick to her, since he himself rarely relied on techniques during duels. He simply didn't need them, meaning his own dueling skills weren't particularly outstanding. Moreover, in past battles against dark wizards, Xiaoji had always started with the Avada Kedavra curse. Clearly that wasn't very suitable for a young witch like Hermione. Professor Flitwick, on the other hand, possessed both excellent technique and a warm demeanor towards students seeking his guidance. After all, dueling was a sport he adored. Xiaoji felt there was no problem with Hermione learning from him. During the summer break, he'd already taught Nagini enough spells for her to handle comfortably. She merely lacked some technique and experience, precisely what Professor Flitwick could provide her. Before long, it was late November. That day, everyone felt immensely excited, as it was finally the scheduled date for the dueling club. The young witches and wizards had been eagerly anticipating this for ages. After all, this was far more entertaining than sitting through ordinary classroom lessons, wasn't it? That evening, nearly all students gathered in the Great Hall for the inaugural dueling club session. Professor Dumbledore clearly placed great importance on this event. With Voldemort poised to return, students had grown far too comfortable in their sheltered environment. They needed to learn at least a few life-saving skills. That night, every young witch and wizard hurried toward the Great Hall, brimming with excitement. When Xiaoji and Cassandra Vole arrived, they found the hall already packed with people. Four long rectangular tables had been joined together and placed at the center, draped with a massive red carpet. Disappointment quickly set in as they noticed Lockhart standing on the stage, beaming like a peacock in full display. Xiaoji glanced around and eventually spotted Professor Flitwick in a corner below the stage, looking quite displeased. Hermione stood right beside him. Without hesitation, Xiaoji pushed through the crowd, with Cassandra close behind, until they reached the base of the stage. "Professor, aren't you coming up?" Xiaoji asked, approaching Flitwick. "We ought to demonstrate proper dueling etiquette first. So, please wait down here for now," Flitwick replied, shrugging and mimicking Lockhart's tone. "It's as if he can't teach them etiquette unless I'm absent," Flitwick muttered indignantly. "Professor, don't worry, later we'll show him what's what," Xiaoji whispered reassuringly. "Oh, I'd love to, but I can't bring myself to strike him too harshly. Initially, I thought he'd at least possess some self-awareness." "No need for harshness, Professor. Just use the disarming charm, or perhaps a mild, stunning spell." That makes perfect sense. I've wanted to do this ever since he droned on about his own spellcraft," Flitwick exclaimed gleefully. Lockhart had nothing worthwhile to teach anyone unless he chose to share his forgetfulness charm with them. Otherwise, it was better he simply stayed put and didn't interfere with genuine learning. On this point, Xiaoji and Flitwick completely agreed. Unaware of their schemes, Lockhart gazed down at the ever-growing crowd, utterly pleased with himself. He was already plotting how to steal the spotlight and regain his lost prestige. Soon, all students had gathered. Xiaoji noticed Snape lurking at the back of the Slytherin group, an unexpected sight. He wondered whether he'd get a chance to spar with Snape. In his past life, some claimed that within Hogwarts, aside from Dumbledore, the second strongest wasn't Flitwick or McGonagall, but Snape himself. Xiaoji suddenly grew eager. Indeed, Snape's Sectum Semper curse was quite impressive, though he only knew the incantation, not its counterspell. He resolved to seek Snape later to learn both the full spell and its reversal. While Xiaoji plotted, Lockhart began speaking on stage. "Can everyone see me? Can everyone hear me?" Lockhart twirled his wand in complex patterns, almost like a juggler. "Yes, Professor Dumbledore has granted me permission to establish this modest dueling club. Its purpose is to train all of you thoroughly, so should the need arise, you'll be able to defend yourselves using methods I've employed countless times." He then spent 5 or 6 minutes detailing proper bowing etiquette prior to duels. Below, students yawned endlessly. Xiaoji nearly dozed off from sheer boredom, if not for Hermione propping him up from the front. Eventually, sensing the impatience of the crowd, Lockhart moved on to the main topic. "All right, now I'll demonstrate the actual process of dueling." His gaze swept past Flitwick and landed on Xiaoji, who was half asleep. Allow me to introduce my assistant today, Professor Flitwick." Flitwick smiled and prepared to ascend, but Lockhart's next words halted him. "However, to illustrate more clearly, I believe we ought to invite a student up first. I'll personally instruct them, correcting their motions so all may observe properly. Afterward, Professor Flitwick and I will perform a genuine duel. That'll leave a lasting impression. So, Professor Flitwick, please wait here. Xiaji, would you mind joining me up here? Please grant me flowers. Xiaji felt drowsy until he felt Hermione jab him with her elbow. Xiaji, Lockhart's calling you up. Huh. Xiaji glanced toward Lockhart, bewildered. Would you mind temporarily serving as my assistant? I fear that when I spar with Professor Flitwick, my movements may be too swift. Students might miss crucial details. True enough, if he fought Flitwick, he'd obliterate him in seconds. Xiaji inwardly scoffed. Still, he ascended the stage. Lockhart's eyes gleamed with delight. He probably saw Xiaji as a harmless, easy-to-manipulate kid. Impossible. Yet that was precisely Lockhart's thinking. He knew full well he couldn't best Flitwick, so his plan was to first dominate Xiaji effortlessly, then use the ensuing duel to interrupt Flitwick's attacks with constant commentary. That way, he'd prolong his time on stage. Even if defeated, he could claim it was merely to showcase common mistakes. His calculations were meticulous, provided he crushed Xiaji, of course. To Lockhart, this seemed effortless. Though Xiaji stood out among students, he was still just a second year. How formidable could he truly be? As for newspaper claims that he'd single-handedly defeated an entire squad of Ors, Lockhart dismissed that as nonsense. He himself had fabricated similar exaggerations, yet this one seemed downright ridiculous. A mere untrained student defeating elite Ors? Absurd. Xiaji's eyes were pitch black. He glanced at Lockhart's elated expression and instantly grasped his intentions. Turning back, he smiled at Flitwick, who watched him with visible worry. Flitwick wasn't concerned for Xiaji's safety. He silently mouthed, "Go easy, be gentle." Xiaji nodded affirmatively. "Excellent. Now stand opposite me, Xiaji," Lockhart declared joyfully. Xiaji positioned himself across from him. "Good. First, we bow to one another, just as I described earlier." Lockhart bent low, executing elaborate hand gestures. Xiaji merely dipped his head slightly, gazing at Lockhart with an odd expression, like a lion observing a meek lamb before it. Below, Harry shivered upon witnessing that look. It evoked painful memories. Both raised their wands like swords, positioning them before their chests. "See how we grip our wands in standard dueling fashion? On my count of 3, we'll cast our first spells. Rest assured, I'll hold back considerably," Lockhart assured them warmly. 3, 2, 1. Chapter 186. Snape is shocked. Xiaji's magical power actually exceeds mine? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The countdown came to an end. Yet Xiaji stood motionless, eager to see just how pathetic Lockhart truly was. In his eyes, Lockhart's movements appeared excruciatingly slow. Even Harry had managed to knock him down twice before he could react. Expelliarmus! A red beam shot forth from Lockhart's wand. Lockhart's eyes brimmed with triumphant glee. He'd acted faster than Xiaji. Defeat was inevitable for Xiaji. But Xiaji remained completely still, and the red beam simply zipped past him at a distance of 3 meters. Silence fell over the entire arena. The atmosphere turned awkward. Lockhart's face flushed red. Xiaji hadn't budged an inch, yet he'd somehow missed. Ahem. What I just did was a clear example of a mistake. Casting a spell without proper aim. That's very bad. It's a terrible habit that prevents your spells from hitting their target accurately. Lockhart hastily tried to cover his embarrassment. I see. Professor Lockhart, would you mind demonstrating the proper way to do it? Xiaji asked with a teasing smile. Oh, of course. Watch closely. Expelliarmus. This time, Lockhart moved even slower. It was evident he'd taken great care to aim. A slightly brighter red beam shot towards Xiaji's head at precise trajectory. This time, the aim was flawless, and Lockhart's face lit up with renewed joy. The spell was on the verge of striking Xiaji, yet he still didn't move, not even raising his wand. He merely tilted his head slightly, and the spell glanced harmlessly past his ear. Not a single hair on his head was disturbed. Lockhart felt both humiliated and bewildered. He'd aimed perfectly, yet Xiaji dodged it effortlessly. That made no sense. Absolutely none at all. Xiaoji smiled gently. May I now return the favor, Professor? Of course. Feel free to attack me anytime. You're merely a second-year student, so you might not even manage to cast any offensive spells, but I certainly won't mock you. In duels, decisiveness is equally important. Then do be careful, Xiaoji replied with a grin, then pointed his wand at Lockhart. Stupefy. A blazing red beam struck Lockhart squarely in the stomach. Boom! Lockhart was sent flying off the dueling platform, crashing hard against the wall before slowly sliding down to the ground, unconscious and curled up. Xiaoji himself was somewhat speechless. He'd even paused deliberately while casting the spell. Even Neville Longbottom could have dodged it. Yet Lockhart hadn't evaded it at all. The young witches and wizards below erupted in excited cheers. This was quite the spectacle. Professor Flitwick stepped forward to examine Lockhart. Only a few broken ribs, nothing serious. Severus, could you help me send Professor Lockhart to the infirmary? Flitwick suppressed a smile as he glanced towards Snape standing behind the crowd. Snape's cheek twitched violently. How had Flitwick, so short in stature, even noticed he was hiding back there? Yet Snape had no intention of personally transporting Lockhart. Part of his purpose here was to gauge Xiaoji's abilities. He'd never seen him cast a spell before. You take Professor Lockhart to the infirmary. Snape's face darkened as he pointed at Flint standing before him. Though clearly reluctant, no Slytherin dared disobey Snape's orders. Flint, being a Quidditch player, possessed considerable strength. He hoisted Lockhart onto his back and hurried off toward the infirmary. His levitation spells simply weren't strong enough to carry an adult wizard. Flitwick glanced at Snape, then back at Xiaoji on the platform, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Flitwick leapt onto the platform. It seems Professor Lockhart can no longer instruct us in dueling today, yet our dueling club must continue. He turned to Snape. Severus, would you assist us? Of course, Snape's lips curled slightly. Flitwick's offer suited him perfectly. Perhaps this was his chance to thoroughly test Xiaoji's prowess. Snape already knew from Dumbledore that Xiaoji was immensely powerful, yet he'd never witnessed it firsthand. Confident in his own combat abilities, Snape figured he could offer Xiaoji some valuable guidance. True, Xiaoji's killing curse was formidable, but relying solely on Avada Kedavra wasn't enough. If his offensive repertoire remained too limited, then even if he didn't perish at Voldemort's hands, he'd surely fall victim to those lunatics under his command. A faint, enigmatic smile graced Snape's lips. Seeing this expression, Harry grew deeply concerned for Xiaoji. Only when Snape harbored malicious intent did he wear such a look, such as when proposing to expel Harry or when planning to deduct points from him. Had Harry been in Xiaoji's place, fleeing at once would have been the wisest move. Snape strode steadily toward the dueling platform. His aura was so commanding that students instinctively parted to clear him a path. Flitwick opened his mouth to speak, but Snape interrupted him. Allow me to carry on Professor Lockhart's unfinished task. I shall properly instruct you in dueling. With 2 swift steps, Snape ascended the platform and drew his wand. Xiaoji smiled. This was precisely his chance to assess Snape's abilities. Facing one another, both bowed slightly in greeting. All fell silent, eyes fixed on the 2 duelists. Everyone knew Xiaoji was immensely powerful. Rumors and his earlier feat of downing an entire Slytherin squad with 1 spell proved this. As for defeating Lockhart moments prior, well, Lockhart was pathetically weak. His defeat held no real significance. Yet seeing Snape's demeanor and posture, all sensed he was no ordinary opponent. Would Snape triumph over Xiaoji, or would it be the other way around? Expelliarmus. Stupefy. Boom. 2 red beams collided midair. Xiaoji gazed calmly at Snape's impassive face while maintaining his own spell work. Snape sensed Xiaoji's magical output was quite decent, truly exceptional for a second year, but still vastly inferior to his own. Determined to subdue him, Snape amplified his magical output, aiming to disarm Xiaoji as a show of dominance. He'd long resented this arrogant brat. How dare he waltz into Snape's office uninvited? Hand over your wand at once. Then Snape froze in shock. His calculations dictated that merely increasing his power slightly would send Xiaoji's wand flying, yet it remained firmly in his grip. Snape boosted his output further, only to realize something staggering. No matter how intensely he poured energy into his spells, Xiaoji's own magical resistance always matched it perfectly. This boy was holding back. Snape instantly grasped this, so he abruptly ceased the spell exchange. He forcefully shattered their colliding beams, then swiftly unleashed another stupefy. Xiaoji retracted his spellwork. Protego! A shimmering iron shield materialized before him. Snape's stupefy bounced harmlessly off it. Yet Snape wasn't Lockhart. He effortlessly deflected the rebounding curse. Xiaoji waved his wand. Total shield charm. A translucent blue barrier enveloped his entire figure. Clang! 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 Every subsequent spell Snape hurled struck the shield without effect. Xiaoji stood serenely within it, observing Snape's relentless assault with utter composure. Yet regardless of the spells or sheer power Snape deployed, not a single crack appeared on Xiaoji's shield. Soon, beads of sweat formed on Snape's brow. He'd exerted his utmost, yet the shield remained unbroken. This defied all logic. By now, Snape fully grasped the truth. Xiaoji's magical prowess surpassed his own. Yet dueling isn't merely about raw power. A faint crimson gleam flashed in Snape's eyes. He raised his wand once more, swirling it twice. Two jet-black beams struck Xiaoji's shield. Crackle! To Snape's astonishment, Xiaoji's total shield charm shattered instantly. Xiaoji's eyes lit up. Finally, Snape unveiled his true trump card. This lethally precise attack was undeniably potent. Maintaining such a shield required immense effort. Seeing his shield broken, Snape visibly exhaled in relief, then reverted to conventional spells. Against an unprotected Xiaoji, Snape dared not recklessly deploy his Sectum Sempra technique. Expelliarmus! Expelliarmus! At last, Xiaoji began his counterattack. Unlike Snape's frantic evasion attempts, Xiaoji dodged with effortless grace and elegance. Snape required visual cues, tracking spell trajectories or wand direction, to anticipate impact zones. Xiaoji, however, possessed unparalleled instinct. He foretold spell landing points even before Snape cast them. Had he failed to dodge then, he deserved to be buried headfirst in tofu. Boom! Two red beams clashed once more, leaving Snape's face ashen. He suddenly realized he was losing to Xiaoji. Xiaoji's magical reserves were simply staggering. Overwhelmingly so. Though Snape's expression remained stoic, his inner turmoil reached tsunami levels. He'd known Xiaoji was stronger than him, but never imagined the disparity would be this vast. This level of power rivaled even Voldemort's at his prime. Yet Xiaoji was merely a second year. Impossible. Absolutely inconceivable. Snape was utterly stunned. Chapter 187. Xiaoji, if I become a fool, will you still be my friend? Snape was still in awe of Xiaoji's magical prowess. Suddenly, he noticed that Xiaoji across from him seemed to wink at him. Immediately afterward, he felt the pressure on his wand suddenly lessen. Snape understood that Xiaoji was giving him a way out. If he were to lose to Xiaoji in front of the entire school, it would be utterly humiliating. Humph. You think giving me an escape route means I'd be grateful? Naive. At most next time you come to my office, I'll brew you some aged tea. Meanwhile, Xiaoji and Snape engaged in an intense battle, exchanging spells back and forth, their magical barges even blowing a large hole in the dueling platform. This spectacular fight left the young witches and wizards below cheering excitedly. Eventually, Professor Flitwick intervened, citing excessive destructive power as the reason, thus bringing an end to the duel. Naturally, since it was cut short, neither side was declared the victor. As the dueling champion, Professor Flitwick easily noticed that the latter part of the fight was merely a show. That's why he took the opportunity to step in and halt it. After all, he had also sparred with Xiaji before, so he fully understood how Snape felt at that moment. Had he not intervened, Snape might very well have pushed himself to the brink of exhaustion. Standing atop the platform, Professor Flitwick began explaining all the spells Xiaji and Snape had used during their duel. Suddenly, Snape approached Xiaji and whispered in a voice only the two could hear, "Your abilities are quite decent." Then he turned and walked away. Xiaji noticed that after Snape left, a neatly folded piece of parchment had appeared in his pocket. Only after watching Snape disappear around the corner did Xiaji unfold the parchment. Written on it were precisely the shield charm and its counterspell, the very thing Xiaji had been eager to learn earlier. Xiaji gazed in surprise toward the direction Snape had left, realizing that Snape must have noticed the eager gleam in his eyes when he'd seen the shield charm earlier. "Thanks," Xiaji murmured softly toward Snape's retreating back. After that, Professor Flitwick began organizing the students into groups for practice duels. With Snape gone, Xiaji temporarily stepped in as an assistant, helping the professor teach everyone various spells. No one objected to this arrangement. Xiaji was, after all, someone capable of matching Professor Snape. He was more than qualified to serve as an assistant. Thanks to Lockhart's early departure and Snape's absence, the subsequent group exercises proceeded smoothly and orderly. No one abandoned their wands to resort to hand-to-hand combat, nor did anyone sustain injuries due to botched spells. Hermione was pleasantly surprised to discover she wasn't as weak as she'd imagined. Her opponent, Millicent Bulstrode, tall and muscular though she was, now lay sprawled on the ground. Without Snape's interference, Harry wasn't paired with Draco Malfoy. Instead, he ended up teaming up with Ron in their usual friendly bickering. Cassandra Vole's opponent was Pansy Parkinson from Slytherin. Though Pansy firmly believed she, being of pure-blood descent, was no less capable than Cassandra, she couldn't even last a single round against her. Ultimately, the dueling club concluded amidst cheerful camaraderie. Thus, a world where only Lockhart suffered harm was achieved. Yet Lockhart actually got off relatively lightly. The impressive displays by Xiaji and Snape during their duel made many believe it only natural for him to lose to Xiaji. Consequently, his reputation didn't suffer irreparable damage. As Christmas approached, the students felt the school atmosphere lighten considerably. Of course, it might also have been because the professors refrained from assigning excessive homework. That night, Xiaji emerged from his trunk. He'd just fed the final rooster to Tom Riddle. In a few days, he'd finally uncover the secrets hidden within Tom's mind. Currently, Tom seemed somewhat muddled. Perhaps this was merely a temporary side effect of overnutrition. Thus, when Xiaji offered him a sacrifice inside the trunk, Tom didn't even notice any changes to his surroundings. Suddenly, the door to Xiaji's dormitory opened softly. A figure slipped inside and effortlessly climbed into the empty bed beside him. Lately, Cassandra Vole had been visiting his dormitory each night without fail. Of course, they merely shared stories together. Nothing inappropriate ever occurred between them. After their trip to the Forbidden Forest, Cassandra grew bolder. She even dared to venture alone to the kitchens to fetch snacks for Xiaji. In the past, such nighttime excursions would have been unthinkable for her. As usual, Xiaji recounted a story about monkeys, specifically how the 4 disciples accidentally wandered into Mount Lion Camel. Yet before long, he sensed Cassandra had fallen asleep. Xiaji shook his head with a sigh. Ever since reaching the part where the Monkey King was imprisoned beneath 5 Elements Mountain and became Tang Sanzang's top disciple, Cassandra's interest in the tale had noticeably waned. Perhaps for her, the Monkey King ceased to exist the moment he was bound. Xiaji rose, tucked the blanket around Cassandra, then returned to his own bed. Just as he prepared to sleep, an inexplicable sense of foreboding washed over him, though he couldn't pinpoint its source. Could Tom be causing trouble? His instinct suggested otherwise. This had nothing to do with Voldemort. Yet, if not Voldemort, what else could possibly pose a threat to him now? Completely awake now, Xiaji crawled back into his trunk and checked the diary inside. Tom remained peacefully asleep. No anomalies at all. Suddenly, his heart clenched violently. Something terrible had occurred. Frowning, Xiaoji swiftly emerged from the trunk. There, a shadow darted past the window. Relieved, he glanced at Cassandra. She slept soundly, unharmed. At once, the ominous feeling faded, as though it had never existed. What was that shadow? It resembled a human figure, yet no human could move so swiftly or silently. Even if the intruder had used a flight charm, why remained there not a single scratch on the glass? Xiaoji touched the window. It felt icy cold. Was it merely a passing ghost? Yet ghosts within the school never trespassed upon students' dormitories. Could it finally be her coming for me? Xiaoji murmured softly. System. Allocate those 3 skill points from last time to divination, Xiaoji stated calmly. It was high time to upgrade his divination proficiency. Though knowing too much might dull life's joys, it equally prevented unnecessary troubles. After careful deliberation, Xiaoji raised divination to level 6.
Ding.
Points allocated successfully. Instantly, Xiaoji felt his skull seemed struck by a massive hammer, as though an extra eye had materialized on his forehead. An intense sensation followed. He sensed he could perceive any future event simply by opening this eye. He attempted it, but excruciating pain instantly overwhelmed him, sending him unconscious. Xiaoji awoke to find himself in the infirmary. You're awake? Turning his head, Xiaoji saw Cassandra gazing at him with relief. Her face, however, appeared haggard. Clearly she'd gotten little rest. What happened? Xiaoji touched his forehead. No trace of that mysterious eye remained. Yet he sensed it could reappear at will whenever he wished. You've been unconscious for 3 full days and nights. When I found you sprawled on the floor that morning, pale as death, I was terrified.
Ding.
Host recklessly attempted to activate Heavenly Eye, suffering backlash. The system suddenly chimed in his mind. I feel I could open it, Xiaoji pondered.
Ding.
Given your current abilities, you can fully activate Heavenly Eye. Yet the wider it opens, more visions you'll receive, including your own future. Prophets must never casually predict their own fate. Meaning I glimpsed my own future last night?
Ding.
Precisely. Though before any vision could manifest, this system rendered you unconscious. Damn it. So it was you.
Ding.
Hosts should be grateful. Otherwise, you'd now be a simpleton. All right, thanks. Xiaoji reflected. He'd indeed ignored system warnings and impulsively activated Heavenly Eye. Fortunately, the system had intervened. Wait. How exactly did you knock me out?
Ding.
This is merely figurative description. In truth, the system promptly deactivated Heavenly Eye prior to any future revelation, though complete prevention of backlash proved impossible. Right, so activating Heavenly Eye isn't freely allowed. What's the point of upgrading divination then?
Ding.
Actually, host may activate Heavenly Eye at will to foresee anyone's future. Merely recite, exclude self, beforehand to block all visions involving yourself. Huh? That's simple.
Ding.
Exactly so. Host excessively relied on innate crisis awareness talent, a divination-derived ability prone to overlooking divination-specific perils. Xiaoji felt disheartened. He'd nearly met disaster due to such oversight. Arrogance must never be tolerated. Post-power surge, Xiaoji inevitably grew complacent, a natural tendency, yet one fraught with peril. This wasn't his desired path. Humility and steadiness remained paramount.
Ding.
Actually, so long as host doesn't employ first-person narration during prophecy, even visions of future self remain harmless. Still, overuse of this loophole is inadvisable. Such convenience exists.
Ding.
Given host's near-fatal experience, system deems further detailed guidance advisable. Suddenly, a chilly hand pressed against his forehead. Cassandra, she spoke urgently. What's wrong? Why did you suddenly act so dazed? Earlier, she'd spoken to Xiaoji repeatedly, but lost in system dialogue. He'd ignored her. Seeing his vacant expression, Cassandra feared he'd turn stupid. As she stood frantically, poised to summon Madame Pomfrey, Xiaoji swiftly grasped her hand. If I truly became a fool, would you still be friends with me? Xiaoji gazed at her with a gentle smile. Chapter 188. What? Two heads of houses fought over me. How could I possibly befriend a fool? Cassandra looked at Xiaoji with visible disdain. Xiaoji's expression instantly fell. The atmosphere had been so pleasant. Why wasn't anything going according to plan? But if that fool is you... Cassandra suddenly blushed. I'll go tell everyone that you've woken up. With that, she hurried out of the infirmary. Xiaoji instantly perked up again. His joy stemmed solely from the fact that he now possessed sufficient prophetic abilities, absolutely not because a little girl blushed in his presence. Xiaoji was upright, virtuous, and of impeccable character. There was no way he'd harbor any feelings toward a little girl. Impossible. Utterly impossible. Xiaoji briefly checked his heavenly eye and, following the system's instructions, slightly opened it. Sure enough, once he filtered out any information related to himself, he truly began seeing future events. Yet this didn't elicit any extraordinary reaction from him. His feelings remained unchanged from before. Previously, though he never deliberately used his prophetic abilities, having read the original story thoroughly, he already knew what would happen. Now, his feelings mirrored those times. The only difference was that this original story he saw now differed slightly from the one he'd witnessed in his past life. Nonetheless, to play it safe, he deliberately blocked out any events involving himself. He unfollowed the system's advice to just go with it, so certain occurrences involving those around him had become invisible, events where he'd supposedly played a role. Even so, this level of foresight was more than enough. Before long, a flurry of hurried footsteps echoed outside the infirmary. The door swung open, and a group of people entered. Professor Dumbledore gazed at Xiaoji with deep concern, while Snape held a large vial of potion. After handing it to Madame Pomfrey, his hollow eyes fixed intently on Xiaoji. Nearly every professor had arrived. Even Lockhart hid somewhere among the crowd. Professor McGonagall clutched her chest, tears glistening in her eyes. Xiaoji, you're finally awake. What on earth happened? I feared we'd lost you. Professor Flitwick also looked at him anxiously. Oh, I thought perhaps you'd fallen victim to some curse during your clash with Professor Snape? Snape shot Flitwick a glare. Clearly, they'd already engaged in an argument. Hermione, Harry, and Cedric were also present, though they stood behind the professors. With so many teachers around, they dared not speak up. Xiaoji grew curious. How had they all arrived so swiftly? Cassandra stood beside Madame Pomfrey, reporting something. The latter nodded repeatedly at Xiaoji, clearly worried over his sudden stupidity. We nearly had to send you to St. Mungo's, but Professor Dumbledore insisted you hadn't been cursed or harmed. You were simply asleep, Flitwick explained. I'm overjoyed you've awakened safely, Xiaoji. Dumbledore's eyes shone with delight. Though I'm curious about the cause of your unconsciousness, you're under no obligation to share it with me. Of course I can explain, Professor Dumbledore. It involves a minor talent of mine. That night, it underwent some unexpected changes. As he spoke, Xiaoji touched his ring. Dumbledore felt a sudden warmth emanating from his own ring. A message had arrived. That's truly wonderful news. Still, it's wiser not to divulge it lightly. He raised a slender finger to his lips, signaling silence. Xiaoji nodded. He'd just informed Dumbledore that his prophetic abilities had suddenly evolved that night, causing his collapse. Given his previous reliability, Dumbledore believed him and reiterated his warning. Those with prophetic gifts were easily exploited and highly vulnerable. It was safer not to reveal such talents unless one possessed power comparable to his own old friend. Back when he'd interviewed Sybil Trelawney, her prophecy had triggered a chain of tragedies. Hence, hiring her as Hogwarts divination teacher served as protection. Otherwise, Voldemort might have found her sooner. He refused to let Xiaoji become a target too. So, what exactly happened? McGonagall frowned, bewildered by Dumbledore's secrecy. I believe his friends have much to discuss with him. We shouldn't intrude. Still, Xiaoji, should you leave the infirmary, do visit me in my office. It's been ages since you've come by. Dumbledore winked, then led McGonagall and the others away. Distantly, McGonagall's indignant voice carried. She sensed Dumbledore was concealing something.
Oh,
Minerva, if truly you wish to know, come discuss it in my office. Snape cast one final, piercing glance at Siaji before departing. Flitwick watched him go. Well, though I've no idea what occurred, I'm relieved it wasn't Snape cursing you. Flitwick left too. Siaji noticed his right leg limped slightly. Rumor has it, upon hearing of your plight, our head of Ravenclaw assumed Snape cursed you, so he challenged him to a duel. Luna's ethereal voice emerged from behind Cedric. He'd blocked her view earlier due to his height. I hope had Trelawney won. Siaji gazed fondly at the tiny figure retreating into the distance. They fought until McGonagall intervened. She'd never seemed so furious before. Cedric shuddered at the memory. It was quite memorable. Siaji, you're incredible. Getting the Ravenclaw and Slytherin heads to duel over you? Unheard of in Hogwarts history. Fred and George fiddled with a suspicious round object wrapped in gift paper. This is our gift for you. Please accept it. Siaji rubbed his temples wearily. If this gift is a toilet seat.
what?
A toilet seat. Madame Pomfrey's eyes snapped to the twins' suspicious package. That's utterly unsanitary. Toss it outside at once. Siaji, how did you know it was a toilet seat? A shame. We'd hoped to prank you this time. Guess we failed. The Weasley twins were promptly shooed out by Pomfrey. Cassandra approached. I saw Dumbledore instruct you to keep it secret. But, well, if he insists, you mustn't speak of it.
Exactly.
Though we can't fathom why you collapsed. We wonder if this'll recur? Hermione fretted. She knew she shouldn't pry, yet she needed to know if Siaji faced similar risks in the future. Absolutely not. Never again. Siaji smiled reassuringly. He'd learned from this misstep. His earlier arrogance had been excessive. Confidence was good, but hubris was fatal. Even in games, activating cheat codes granting invincibility wouldn't save you from a single system glitch. In reality, with only one life at stake, caution was paramount. He wouldn't flee from danger, but he'd at least retreat behind others at the first sign of trouble. If you say so, we believe you. Just don't disappoint us. Cassandra crossed her arms. Siaji nodded fervently. He'd never nodded so much in his life. He remained in the infirmary another day. Only after thorough checks cleared him did he finally leave. Yet, instead of returning to his dormitory, he headed toward the headmaster's office on the 8th floor. Dumbledore had told him to visit post-discharge. Gazing at the whomping willow before him, Siaji mused, sweet and sour carp? Sweet and sour pork? Lemon meringue? Yet the tree reacted not at all. While he puzzled over the correct password, the tree abruptly leapt aside, revealing a spiral staircase. Siaji ascended and knocked on the office door. Dumbledore sat at his desk, smiling warmly at Siaji's entrance. Actually, the password was sweet and sour spare ribs. Siaji stared in astonishment. I've never cooked that dish, nor taught it to the house elves. The distant eastern land of G. Their cuisine is divine. I often dine there during holidays. Dumbledore's eyes sparkled. Truthfully, never in England have I tasted such marvelous fare. Siaji took a seat. Dumbledore grinned. Care for some red bean paste soup? Or perhaps green bean paste instead? Well, wasn't this now beyond chilled lemonade and pumpkin juice? Evidently, he frequented Eastern dessert shops often. Red bean paste, please. Siaji replied solemnly. Chapter 189. Dumbledore, I hear you have a pen pal named Mr. G? A wise choice, Siaji. Dumbledore cheerfully tapped his wand lightly in front of Siaji. Instantly, a bowl of red bean paste appeared before him. Siaji picked up a small spoon, then grasped the bowl and took a big gulp. Why use a spoon when drinking red bean paste? The proper way is to gulp it down heartily. But right after that, Siaji immediately regretted it. He shot Dumbledore a grimace. Dumbledore gazed at him expectantly. This is my red bean paste. How does it taste? It's very sweet. Siaji calmly set the bowl down, resolving never to touch it again. He certainly didn't want to spend the rest of his life dependent on insulin. Wait, do wizards even get diabetes? Well, that settles it then. Yet, moments later, Xiaoji reached for the bowl once more and took another sip. I knew MY would be a success. Dumbledore beamed like an ecstatic child. After chatting briefly about delicacies from distant eastern lands, they gradually steered the conversation toward the main topic. Xiaoji, your prophetic talent is exceedingly rare and precious. But, promise me, under no circumstances must you ever attempt to predict your own future. Dumbledore spoke with grave seriousness. Yes, I understand. Professor Dumbledore, how did you come to know this? I have an old friend who also possesses this rare gift of prophecy. It was from him that I learned all this. Thankfully, Dumbledore's gaze turned profoundly tender, as though lost in some cherished memory. I get it, Professor. In fact, whenever I try to glimpse my own future, some unseen force always blocks me. So you truly have nothing to worry about.
Exactly.
Remember this well. Breaking those taboos brings irreversible consequences, consequences of immense gravity. In the past, Gel. Well, just be extremely careful. 057 So, why don't we now attempt to predict whether Voldemort will return in the future? I strongly advise against it, Xiaoji. Dumbledore gazed at him silently. The future is sometimes fixed, inevitable. Yet at other times, it remains malleable. Dumbledore continued, a future that was once set in stone becomes alterable the moment you perceive it through prophecy. Do you follow my meaning? Xiaoji nodded affirmatively. The future comprises countless possibilities, countless interwoven threads. It naturally progresses along the most probable path. Yet should anyone glimpse that path beforehand, its likelihood diminishes, for that person now constitutes a variable. For instance, had Xiaoji foreseen Harry's death the next day, such an outcome seemed highly probable prior to their encounter. But had Xiaoji anticipated this and broken Harry's legs with a jeep before he ventured outside, Harry would have escaped death. The original predicted future thus altered. Its trajectory shifted due to Xiaoji's intervention, diverging into another possible path. In essence, the future itself cannot truly be changed, only the specific path it follows. Yet even this shift isn't guaranteed to unfold as desired. It might even worsen. At times, actions taken to prevent a predicted event inadvertently ensure its occurrence. The future teeters between infinite possibilities. Any interference demands utmost caution. Otherwise, as illustrated above, Harry might not die from recklessness outside, yet perish under Xiaoji's jeep instead. That too constitutes one of the possible futures, and the slightest deviation could steer it down that path. Hence, Dumbledore urged Xiaoji to avoid casual prophecy. Such acts might inadvertently grant Voldemort a sliver of hope. And that would spell disaster for everyone. Xiaoji nodded earnestly. One must never presume to toy with fate, or else fate itself may toy with you. Conversing with a clever child is always such a delight. Dumbledore happily sipped his red bean paste. All right. During your 3-day unconsciousness, someone delivered a letter to you. Though I refrained from reading it, well, it had no envelope. It simply floated straight to your bedside, and as I happened to be present, I accidentally caught a glimpse. Dumbledore produced a scroll and handed it to Xiaoji, though his azure eyes remained fixed intently on him, seeking subtle clues from his expression. Xiaoji accepted the letter with delight, showing no sign of alarm. Oh, this is a reply from my pen pal. He then explained to Dumbledore the mechanics of his friendship paper airplane system. So, you have no idea who this Mr. G is? Indeed. He's an incredibly erudite individual. I've learned so much from him. Xiaoji smiled warmly. Had I known his identity, I'd have visited him personally. Though I wish no harm to your correspondence, you must remain vigilant around strangers, especially wizards you know not. Don't readily trust their words. You understand what I mean? You simply cannot fathom their true nature. Dumbledore dreaded the thought of Xiaoji being swayed by this person, for he recognized those handwriting strokes all too well. So, distinctly, he could identify them even blindfolded by touch alone. His words? But we only exchanged magical knowledge, nothing else. Dumbledore fell silent briefly, then gazed solemnly at Xiaoji. If possible, I prefer you cease all contact with him. I realize this request seems unreasonable. Do you know who this Mr. G is? Witnessing Dumbledore's grim demeanor, Xiaji feigned a hurt expression. Very well, if you insist, Professor, I'll no longer reply. Professor, is this Mr. G perhaps not a good person? Though reluctant to admit it, yes, he's utterly vile and despicable. Dumbledore paused. Thus, I urge you to sever ties. Should your thirst for magical knowledge surpass our abilities, do approach me. I may boast modestly, but my knowledge rivals his. Xiaji trailed off. Xiaji, please cease all inquiries into Mr. G's identity, all right? Trust me, I'd never wish you harm. Understood. Xiaji spoke with utmost seriousness. Eventually, Xiaji departed the headmaster's office composedly. Prior to arrival, he'd already foreseen Dumbledore discovering his letters with Mr. G and interrogating him there. Though personally involved, what he'd seen utilized Dumbledore's first-person perspective, the very bug the system referenced. Though limited in scope, it proved invaluable at critical junctures. Pity he hadn't foreseen that cloyingly sweet red bean paste. This bug had always existed. Even when predicting for Nagini, he'd employed her visual perspective. Having anticipated all this, he remained unflustered upon Dumbledore's revelation of the letter. Dumbledore knew prophets couldn't predict their own future, yet remained ignorant of this bug, hence doubting nothing. Thankfully, the letter contained no ideological discourse. Otherwise, Dumbledore might have suspected Xiaji under Mr. G's mental control. Even then, he wouldn't have killed Xiaji, yet would have endeavored to deprogram him. A far messier scenario. Fortunately, this future hadn't unfolded so grimly. A smile suddenly graced Xiaji's lips. He'd seen further fragments. The Gryffindor common room would host a modest celebration for his recovery. Many awaited his return. Without delay, he hurried toward it. Deep within a gloomy stone chamber, a gaunt figure lay curled on a frigid stone bed, shivering violently. Suddenly, he spoke, his tone tinged with elation. You've never dared visit twice in 1 year, Albus. The frail figure sat upright. Above, outside the tower's stone walls, a tall, bearded elder stood furiously aflame. Do not forget your solemn vow, Dumbledore spoke coldly. The gaunt figure paused mid-motion. Oh, I haven't seen you so wrathful in ages. Is this my doing? Yet I've adhered strictly to our pact, remaining confined to this icy tomb. Did you write a letter? Dumbledore cut him off. How? How did you know? Did you intercept it? You'll receive no further replies from him. Dumbledore intoned frostily. What have you done to him? The gaunt figure sprang upright. In the dim chamber, his white hair gleamed faintly. He merely possesses a peculiar talent, unintentionally delivering letters to me. You mustn't harm him. Dumbledore's voice softened. Even you, caring for a mere child's welfare? A child? Do you mean X is a child? The chamber dweller's voice brimmed with astonishment. A child possessing such foresight and magical acumen? He stood utterly stunned. You knew not of his identity? Dumbledore spoke bewilderedly. He'd presumed this naive boy, upon corresponding with such a figure, would have divulged all secrets willingly. And no, I know nothing of him. We merely exchanged magical insights. I see now he's your student, correct? No wonder you rage. You'd never wish him near someone like me. Dumbledore fell silent. Thus, he'd inadvertently exposed Xiaji's identity. Chapter 190. Cassandra Vole, I want. Dead. It's fine. Even becoming a ghost to accompany him would be all right. Let me guess. Such a talented young wizard. Another Newt, right? Another favorite student of Dumbledore's? Ha ha ha. The figure inside the stone chamber burst into wild laughter. Gadler. He won't be writing back to you anymore, Dumbledore said calmly. Did you tell him who I am?
Oh, no.
You wouldn't dare tell him who I am. I know you, Albus. You're worried that your students might be influenced by me, aren't you? My name is destined to remain a taboo. Your involvement with him is very detrimental to him. I believe you understand this. If you truly care about him, you shouldn't write back anymore, Dumbledore replied evenly. Silence stretched between them across the cold stone wall for quite some time. Dumbledore turned around, preparing to leave. If X is still a young wizard, then his future achievements will surpass both you and me, Dumbledore. The figure suddenly spoke from within the chamber. Dumbledore paused, listening intently. I've never seen a wizard with such extraordinary talent. If you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have realized he's still an ungraduated student. I've always known how exceptional he is. Stop wasting your efforts, Gadler. He'll never become someone like you. Never. Dumbledore retorted, then walked away without looking back. Inside the stone chamber, the figure began laughing once more. Hee, Dumbledore, you have no idea what kind of person your student really is. But I certainly won't tell you. I truly look forward to seeing your expression at that time. Huh? Xiaji was sitting on the coziest sofa near the fireplace in the Gryffindor common room. His eyes were half closed, a faint white glow flickering within them. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and downed the hot tea in his hand. Cassandra Vole was attempting to brew tea. She was only skilled at making coffee. Tea preparation certainly wasn't her forte. Yet recently, for some peculiar reason, she'd become utterly fascinated by it. Not far away, Hermione was engrossed in a thick book, merely a pastime, as she put it. Xiaji glanced at both of them and suddenly spoke up. I'm going to teach you a spell. It can save lives. But promise me, only use it at the absolute critical moment.
Why?
Why suddenly teach us magic? Hermione asked, puzzled. Cassandra set down the teapot she'd been fiddling with, her emerald green eyes fixed on Xiaji. Just listen. Don't ask questions. Pay close attention. That same strange white glow flashed once more in Xiaji's eyes, though neither Cassandra nor Hermione noticed it. Cassandra and Hermione exchanged glances, both sensing each other's confusion. Yet, since Xiaji told them not to ask, there must be good reason. They'd long since grown fully accustomed to trusting him without hesitation. Xiaji carefully taught them the spell, reiterating his warning. Remember, only at the most crucial moment should you use this. It acts upon the soul itself. Its power is immense. Having said this, Xiaji glanced at Cassandra, then stood up. I'm feeling rather sleepy. I'll head off to rest now. Watching his retreating figure, Cassandra fell deep into thought. Creak, Xiaji's dormitory door opened, and Cassandra slipped inside. Xiaji lay on his bed, seemingly asleep. You came? I'm here. You may come during the day, but tonight it's better if you don't. Xiaji turned over and sat up. Is there something you're planning tonight that you're keeping from me? I have no intention of hiding it, because I simply can't, Xiaji replied with a smile. Tonight, I truly do have matters to attend to. Still, I'll repeat myself. It's best if neither of you comes tonight. In English, you and your are the same word. Thus, Cassandra failed to detect anything amiss. Do you want me to come? Cassandra hesitated. The future comprises countless interwoven threads. Even if I wished you not to come, fate might still bring you here. It depends entirely on your own choices. At certain pivotal moments, differing decisions lead to vastly different outcomes. Such things are highly unpredictable and largely uncontrollable. Xiaji gazed at the ceiling, avoiding her green eyes. Humph. Has your brain somehow malfunctioned? Ever since you fainted that day, you've been spouting nonsense. Like some... Cassandra struggled to find a fitting description. Like a long-winded centaur. Xiaji chuckled bitterly. Indeed, quite similar. Then he turned over and went back to sleep. The dormitory door creaked once more. Cassandra stormed off, indignant. It was the weekend, no classes, no homework, no training, no matches. A thoroughly leisurely day. Xiaji rolled over in bed. Soon, soft snores filled the room. Back in her own quarters, Cassandra kept mulling over Xiaji's words. He clearly didn't want her to visit tonight, meaning he was definitely up to something. Was it something she shouldn't witness? Or perhaps it involved danger, and he didn't want her around to hinder him? She was torn. If she didn't go, she feared he'd be in peril. Yet if she did, she might end up slowing him down, even endangering him. Xiaji was immensely powerful. Surely he'd be fine. But what if something went wrong? What if he collapsed again, just as he had that day? Without anyone to assist him, he'd be utterly defenseless. And why had he suddenly taught her and Hermione that peculiar spell? Her mind was in complete chaos. She resolved to ask him again during dinner, yet to her astonishment, Xiaji, who never missed a meal, hadn't shown up at all. Losing all appetite, she rushed back to the Gryffindor Tower and stood before his dormitory door. Taking a deep breath, she opened it. The bed was neatly made, but Xiaji himself was nowhere to be seen. She froze. Where on earth had he gone? Anxiety surged within her. She considered seeking Professor McGonagall or Professor Dumbledore, but worried Xiaji's actions might violate school rules. Reporting him would essentially be betrayal. She couldn't do that. Damn it. Talking in riddles all the time. Couldn't he just be straightforward? Furious, she kicked his suitcase. A spark of hope flared. Might he be inside? Yet moments later, she emerged empty-handed, utterly disappointed. He wasn't there either. Night descended. Students gradually returned to the common rooms. Curfew approached, yet Cassandra, still lingering there, saw no sign of Xiaji. He's so strong. He'll definitely return safely, she murmured, changing into her nightgown and lying down on her unused bed. After a long while, she sat up again. She simply couldn't sleep. She resolved to check his room once more. It was late now. Perhaps he'd already finished whatever he was doing? The urge to see him grew ever stronger. Finally, she stealthily rose, donning comfortable athletic wear. Glancing at her sleeping roommates, she slipped silently out. The common room stood empty, save for the crackling fireplace casting dim light. She entered the boys' dormitory and approached Xiaji's door. Taking another breath, she reached for the handle, only to discover it was locked. Xiaji's door was never locked. Why would he lock it? Wait, if it was locked from within, that meant he'd already returned. Relief washed over her. He was safe now. Yet, he dared to lock the door? He dared keep me out. Anger flared within her. If you won't let me in, I'll get in myself. Drawing her wand, she gently tapped the lock. Click, the lock yielded. She turned the handle and pushed the door open. The room was dark, yet dread crept into her heart. The bed remained immaculately made. He hadn't returned? But why was the door locked from within? Could he still be inside his suitcase? Just then, the door behind her slammed shut. She spun around. No one was there. It had closed on its own. Hastily, she tried turning the handle again, but it wouldn't budge. That made no sense. Even if locked from outside, it should still open from within. Drawing her wand, she prepared to cast a spell to unlock it, when suddenly, the temperature plummeted. Panic seized her. Was whatever threatened Xiaji now inside the room? She whirled around, but before she could discern anything, a sharp pain lanced her neck. Instantly, she found herself lifted off her feet, throat gripped by unseen force. Clatter. Her wand slipped from her grasp, falling to the floor.
Who are you?
Where's that boy? A hoarse, terrifying voice echoed from before her. She couldn't make out his form, but his hands were ice cold, like frozen claws crushing her throat. Yet pondering his identity was futile now. Choked and gasping, darkness encroached upon her vision. If she didn't act swiftly, she'd be strangled to death. Her wand was lost. She couldn't cast magic without one. Desperately, she raised her hands, striving to pry his fingers apart. She knew her strength was extraordinary now. Yet horror struck her. Her hands slipped right through his fingers. She couldn't touch him at all. This being was a ghost. But how could a ghost physically interact with her? They couldn't affect the material world. Yet she had no time to ponder this. Blackness crept forward. Consciousness faded. She was dying. Suffocation was agonizing. After I die, I'll become a ghost too and stay by his side.